Today's episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network, brought to you by ZipRecruiter. I wish we had ZipRecruiter last night in Philadelphia. They could have found better refs than the three we had. 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within a day. They're the best at distributing your job to the best boards, identifying the right people, inviting them to apply. My listeners can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/BS. Meanwhile, SeatGeek, the best app for buying and selling tickets to sporting events, concerts, and more, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase on any game or sporting event for NBA, NHL, baseball, whatever. You know what to do. Use promo code BS. I made nephew Kyle sign up this weekend and sent him my LAFC season tickets, and he proceeded to get overserved in the VIP club. I think he had a good time, though. Download the SeatGeek app or go right to SeatGeek.com. Don't forget to check out theringer.com. Danny Chow with a really good piece about the Raptors. Danny likes when teams fail for some reason, and that's what he wrote about. One of our strangest and most talented employees. He loves when teams don't reach their potential. It's a very good piece. Brian Curtis also wrote about the weirdest NBA book that of the 90s. It's called Black Planet by David Shields. I did not like the book. I was glad I read it, but I disliked it. And it's interesting. I respected it. I remembered it. And it was interesting to read Brian's case for how it kind of foreshadowed where internet basketball writing was going to a large degree. Anyway, check that out. I hope you subscribe to the Dave Chang Show. We've had 2 episodes. He has one this week. I'm not on the one this week. He did a celebrity interview. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe now. Also subscribe to House of Carbs, our food show with expert Joe House. Kyle, who does House have this week?
House has somebody from GQ talking about the 10 best new restaurants in America.
Oh, somebody from GQ.
It's Brett Martin. It's Brett Martin. Goddamn.
Oh, he's a good writer.
Yeah, he is.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So that's happening as well. Coming up, we have a bunch of Ringer people are coming on. Lindsay Zoladz and I are going to talk about Kanye versus Donald Glover and a torch passing that might be in the works. Alison Herman and I are going to talk about Saturday Night Live and just one of the weirder but more fascinating seasons that they've had, for better and worse. And then Katie Bakes, our old friend from the Grantland days. She's on the Ringer as well. She has the most kids of any Ringer staff other than myself. She's going to give us the hockey playoffs update of the most bizarre hockey playoffs that we've had in a long time. Coming up, we're going to hit Pearl Jam, and then I'm going to talk about the basketball playoffs for a little bit. Here we go. All right, I am in Boston, Massachusetts, taping this Tuesday afternoon. It is May 8th. That was a day when I looked at it and I said, wait a second, it's May 8th. That's something. That means something. Why is that a day? And then I realized it was 3 years ago when I left ESPN. And actually, the whole story of it was a little more complicated than that. But we had hit a point when I knew I wasn't coming back. They knew I wasn't coming back. It was getting increasingly testy behind the scenes. And then I woke up on the morning of May 8th. And after a few things that happened the night before, some of which I don't know if have ever come out. And Dave Jacoby emailed me and was like, what's this? And it was a tweet from a media reporter that ESPN had decided not to renew my contract, which was expiring at the end of September. And that's how I found out that 14 years ESPN, I can't remember how long, that it was officially coming to an end. Not really like having a retirement ceremony. On the one hand, I was kind of relieved that now I could start planning whatever was next. But on the other hand, it was just kind of a shitty day. And then it became a good day because all these people reached out and you realize like, oh yeah, there's lots of things that could happen now. But still, like, you know, the Grantland office was 15 minutes from my house. and all these people I cared about were there, and I couldn't go over and say goodbye to them and stuff like that. So it was a complicated day. And 3 years later, I'm in Boston. The sun's shining. The Celtics are still alive. We have 90 people here at the Ringer. Things are going great. And it's just weird. It feels like it was 15 years ago, but it was actually 3. Or it feels like it was 6 weeks ago. I don't know. Complicated day, May 8th. Fortunately, the Celtics aren't playing tonight because I don't know what would happen. But right now I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. It's beautiful. It's sunny here. I was in Philadelphia last night. Game 4, Sixers Celtics. Crowd was tense. Crowd was happy. Crowd was raucous. Crowd was euphoric at times. Crowd freaked out in the fourth quarter when it looked like the Sixers might lose their lead. And most of all, the crowd was just celebrating the heroics of TJ McConnell, who they had wanted to play for the entire series. If you missed it, I went on the Ringer NBA show and talked about the confetti game on Sunday night and just how crazy that was, how Philly's season basically flipped because Marco Bellinelli was 8 inches over the 3-point line. And then the guy shoots the confetti thing early. And from that point on, you knew the Sixers were doomed. I don't think that's ever worked out in the history of sports. When something dumb like that happens and there's a delay and momentum switch. And, I was getting emails from Philly friends that I had who were at the game, they were all celebrating and hugging each other. And then they, in slow motion, look at the court and nothing, obviously it looked like the game was going to continue. And they're all like, what? Pretty dramatic switch. And when you consider the Celtics pretty much stole game 2 too, I was not convinced there was going to be a sweep last night, especially when you looked at the schedule, which was game 2, Thursday night late, game 3, Saturday afternoon, late afternoon, and then Monday at 6. It was a lot of basketball over a 4.5 day span. The Celtics looked pretty banged up by the end of this game. And I got to be honest, I didn't feel like the Celtics advancing was a foregone conclusion. I don't think Vegas did either. Even with the Celtics had a 3-0 lead, they were only minus 800 favorites to win the series. Philly was plus 650 to win the series. They had not won a game yet. It was game 4. So now you look at what's happening in game 5. I think Philly is slight favorites in game 5. Shane Larkin might be out. The Celtics season has been bizarre when you're saying like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Shane Larkin might be out, but that's where we are as Celtics fans. Jaylen Brown in person did not look good last night. He definitely is not. I saw him against Milwaukee in game 2, and then I saw him again in person last night, and I would estimate he's at like 60%. So that wasn't great. And then I thought Terry Rozier really looked tired last night, and McConnell took advantage of him. Our Lord and Savior, TJ McConnell, took advantage of him over and over again in that game and just had more speed and energy than Rozier did. Celtics hung around, and what was weird about that game, because Philly is so strangely coached, they had the wrong lineup in for a couple minutes there in the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, with like 4.5 minutes left, the crowd was tense. Celtics were down, I think, 9 and missed a 4 wide open threes. I think it was either 3 or 4, but all of them I thought were going in. A couple of them spun in and went out. And Philly was having terrible possessions on the other end. I do feel like if Boston had just made 2 of those threes, they might have actually won the game. But it wasn't their night. The refs were horrible. I was really worried about my dad. His least favorite ref, Scott Foster, took over the game in the second quarter. The Sixers had a 12-1 free throw advantage. So that was ridiculous. And I don't know. I'm nervous. Game 5 tomorrow night in Boston, 8:00 start, which is good. Fans will be nice and lathered up. Celtics 6-0 at home this year. That part's good. Philly doesn't seem to know who their best 5 guys are. That part makes me feel optimistic. If Larkin is out, you're really counting on 7 guys here for this. The Celtics need 3-point shooting, and they need Rozier, all the things they've had all series. But man, there's this looming, if they blow this game 5, now we're back in Philly for game 6 Friday night. Crowd's going to be bonkers. Philly's going to be more comfortable every game. And there is a roadmap where this goes 7. So even though it's not a must win for the Celtics tomorrow, in a way it is, because the longer this goes, the more dangerous it is. I think Vegas agrees. Philly is, I think, a 1-point favorite tomorrow. They might even be 1.5. Our friend Haral Bob thinks it might get to 2.5. So there you go. The biggest gambling miss of the entire playoffs by the general public was LeBron James was plus 160 to beat the Toronto Raptors. He was not even just an underdog. He was like a sizable underdog, and they swept them. They didn't just sweep them. They ripped their hearts out. LeBron ripped the heart out and actually held it up. I forget what Indiana Jones movie that was. I think it was number 2. He just held their hearts up and just and displayed it for the entire crowd. And it was the game winner he hit in game 3 was one of the first ever fuck you game winners that I can remember. He really went into FU mode in game 2. And this is, you know, the Jordan LeBron thing. I don't even want to talk about that argument, but I think the one thing that we were kind of waiting for from the LeBron end, all the people who were there for Jordan and Bird and even going backwards, Russell and people like that, is the final level of basketball, the final level of the video game is when you're so good, you just start messing around. It's almost like the game's not as challenging as it should be for you as a human being anymore. So now you have to challenge yourself. And this was what a lot of the great Larry Bird stories were in 85, 86, 87. You know, you watch like the Bird documentaries, the stuff on YouTube. He'd go into these games. The famous one in Portland, he decided to shoot everything left-handed for the entire game. And then actually like made, I think, 11 or 12 left-handed shots just for the hell of it. And I felt like LeBron was hitting that point in game 2. And that was, you know, when we talk about the Jordan LeBron thing, the thing with Jordan was he was so great that you honestly felt sometimes that he could do whatever he wanted. Even no matter how high the stakes was, how big the stage was, he was still always kind of in control and could mess around however he wanted. I think one of his most famous games was the Portland game 1 of the 92 finals game when for, you know, a week it was Clyde Drexler or Michael Jordan, who's better, and really stupid stuff. And Jordan just came out and took an uncharacteristic number of threes and just gutted the Blazers. And he did it for the sport of it, you know, more than anything. It wasn't just to win the game. It was like he was sending a message. He was messing around. He was experimenting with it. And that's what made it special. And I think that's been the quality that LeBron has not totally had his whole career. What's been great about him is the durability, the consistency, and just what an unbelievable athletic and basketball mind, or what an unbelievable athlete and basketball mind he is. There was never this sense that he was like, I'm so great, I'm just going to destroy you guys. I'm going to mess around now. It was a confidence level that I never felt like he had totally achieved. Even his most famous kind of ass-kicking performance, I think, was 2012 Boston Game 6. And he was making the shots, but it wasn't a performance. He was just trying to crush Boston. There was no performance element to it. He wasn't connecting with the crowd and kind of alerting people that he was on this higher level. And in the Toronto game 2, it was a side of him that we just haven't seen. He was taking these crazy followaways that were horrible shots and making them, and he knew he was going to make them. And he was doing it. I'm talking game 3, not game 2. He was doing it. Oh no, it was game 2 in Toronto. He was doing it to kill the crowd. He was doing it to send a message, and he was doing it because he's the best player in the league and he wasn't challenged by Toronto anymore. And he just wanted to stick it to them. And then game 3 continued, and the buzzer beater he made, which, as I mentioned earlier, was the rarely seen FU buzzer beater. He just made it intentionally difficult on himself. He could have tried to get to the line. He could have pulled up. He could have done all the usual things you do. I think he really wanted to take that specific shot. He wanted a running start. He wanted to go full speed and then shoot off one leg and bank it in. I think all of that was decided before the play happened. I really do. So this side of LeBron that we're seeing is just kind of uncharted territory for him. You know, Windhorst wrote a great piece. Windhorst was on here a couple weeks ago. He wrote a great piece about how LeBron James has figured out how to rest during games and how the stats say that he is one of the 10 slowest people of anyone this NBA season. Now, obviously, he's not one of the slowest people. It's just the pace that he's playing he covers the least amount of distance. It's like in the top 10. And the reason he does that is because he's walking all the time. He's not running. He's not saving his little bursts and things like that. And it really seems like he's hitting a higher level of when he knows exactly what he wants to do at all times, how to spend his energy. His team is still not very good, I don't think. And I really think Indiana could beat them. Love is playing better. They're finally getting something out of George Hill, although with that dude, he could get hurt tomorrow. Everyone else from the big trade deadline that allegedly saved their season, none of those guys are playing. Rodney Hood refused to come in a game yesterday. So they basically 1 for 4 with those guys. Corver's playing better. J.R. Smith's playing better. They're getting something from Thompson again. They have 6 guys right now. And it doesn't really matter because he can smell it, and he's at one of the highest levels this is one of the best peaks we've seen from him. So we got that going. And then the other conference, it's going to be Houston. It's going to be Golden State. We've known that all along. I tried to get excited about New Orleans maybe giving Golden State a 7-gamer. Really interesting story about Draymond Green kind of challenging Durant before Game 4, because I felt the same way from Durant this whole season. He's very hesitant to just lay the smackdown. I don't know what he's trying so hard to be a team player and to not kind of do a Westbrook, basically. And sometimes you got to do a Westbrook. And he did that in Game 4. He was easily the best player on the floor from the get-go and from the entire game. He was taking shots, and I think he ended up with 27 shots. He was being selfish. Guess what? Kind of needed to be selfish. I think there was, especially the last month of the season when the Warriors were starting to come apart a little bit, that would have been a great time for KD to just be like, get on my back. I'm going to score 40 points a game for the next 2 weeks. Here we go. And we just haven't seen that from him this year. And I don't really know what the reasons were. I thought he was incredible the first 2.5 months of the year, both ends. And then from that point on, just seems like he's been on cruise control waiting for the playoffs. Game 4 in New Orleans was a smackdown. We have a lot of guys playing well right now, but he got the better of LeBron last year. It looks like we're headed for Cleveland, Golden State again this year. I would be very surprised if Houston beat Golden State. I'd be very surprised if Cleveland didn't make the playoffs unless they have an injury or something. Who knows? Anyway, we're going to talk quickly about our captain of the week. Hold on, my iPad just turned off. There we go. The captain will not rest until he has brought his adventurous spirit and delicious rum to every corner of America. Original spiced coconut, pineapple, white, black, grapefruit, whatever you want. The captain loves anyone who learns to mix like a captain. I'm making the captain this week, Brad Stevens, who got a technical last night. So that's how you knew the refs were bad, because Brad Stevens never gets technicals ever. But the stuff that he has done in this Philly series, I think the ceiling of Philly's talent is just higher. I think they have better options for mismatches and things like that. And it just did not matter those first 3 games. The out of bounds coming out of a timeout, the plays that he was doing near the end in Game 3 was all-time Stevens. Not a surprise to anybody who's watched him. He's just, when you have him as your coach, you know that your team is going to be the best prepared. You know that you're going to get performances from people that probably wouldn't succeed on just about any other team. You know that he is going to figure out the mismatches that work for Boston that people might not normally see. I think what he did in the first few Philly games, he was basically begging Philly to just pound it to Embiid. Like, please take your 22 to 26 shots. Everyone else is going to stand around. What he didn't want was slash and kick. He didn't want shooters coming off double screens and all the stuff that I think makes Philly really dangerous. He wanted them to pound it to Embiid, and they fell for it, and they did it for 2 straight games. If you notice, they did a lot less yesterday. And that's the thing with a long series. You only have so many moves you can make, so many little tricks. He has more tricks than any coach I've ever seen. I honestly think this is the best basketball coaching performance I've ever seen in my life. It's really rare to see a coach impact a series and a playoffs like this. You know, I think Larry Brown with the 04 Pistons was great. On the other hand, that team had Ben Wallace and Rasheed Wallace in their primes, Chauncey Billups hitting his prime, Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, that they were a monster defensively. That team had so much talent looking back. I don't think you can say the same about this Celtics team. I really don't. Like, the amount that they rely on Jason Tatum is kind of staggering. Yesterday, before he got into foul trouble and he kind of cooled off a little bit, it just seemed like he was the whole offense, just running through Tatum. That's not common. That doesn't happen normally. And I really don't think it would have happened for Tatum on any other team the way it's happened here. Same thing for how he uses Horford and Terry Rozier, who's the fourth guard, and the team comes flying in. I've just been blown away by what he's done. It reminds me of what Belichick was doing in 01. I doubt it's going to have the same result with the stealing the championship thing, but just in 01 with Belichick, just watching that team and going, how are we doing this? This makes no sense. The foundation was pretty similar, though. Really good defense, a couple good players, riding special teams, riding mismatches, coaching tactics, all this stuff. And they were underdogs the whole way and somehow just kept pulling out wins. And all of a sudden they were winning the Super Bowl. Again, I do not think basketball works the same way. In football, you only have to beat somebody once. In basketball, you have to beat them 4 out of 7 times, and usually the right team wins. And at some point, the talent deficiency is going to be overmatched. But I defy you to find any other team in the league where you could just take their 2 best players off the team and then they would be 1 win away from the conference finals. It is inexplicable. Brad Stevens, you probably don't drink. I don't know if you've ever had a drink, but you're my captain of the week. All right, now it's time to talk SNL and a lot more with Alison Herman. Let's go. All right, Alison Herman is here. I don't use the word critic. It's same thing for at Grantland with Andy Greenwald. I never called him TV critic. I called him connoisseur. So I'm going to say the same for you. Our TV connoisseur, Alison Herman, is here. How are you?
Good. Such a fancy title.
I know, it's good, right? Critic makes it seem like somebody's just home bitching about whatever's on. I never like that word. It feels like it's got a negative connotation that I don't appreciate.
Yeah, maybe enthusiast. I feel like that fits.
Oh, that's a good one too. I like that. All right, SNL wrapping up another season. I think this is 43. Is that possible?
43, yeah.
Yeah. Really strange season.
Definitely.
I've grown up with this show. I have seen every variation and incarnation of it. I have learned not to say SNL is dead and all of those things. You just kind of ride it, and the show kind of takes you where culture is, and it has its flaws and it's frustrating sometimes, but ultimately always ends up in the right place over the course of a decade. These last 2 years have been interesting because they don't have really the breakout star. They don't have the dominant male cast member that they've always had that one alpha dog. Kate McKinnon's the closest they have to an alpha dog. She was barely in last week's show. But what they have done is use celebrities and recurring guest star celebrities. And now it's like gone full blown where you have the last couple of weeks, they've had these shows where you have Ben Stiller and Jimmy Fallon and Alec Baldwin. And it's basically like a Hollywood cast pretending to be an SNL cast. Is this a trend, or is this just what this show is now?
I mean, they got in a weird bad habit by outsourcing for Trump. They obviously cast Baldwin, who's in this weird liminal, like he's half a celebrity, but he's half a friend of the show. He's in like the so-called Five Timers Club. He's obviously a bigger star than SNL, but he makes sense to pull in as a regular. And then for reasons that I don't fully understand, they just decided to double down. So like what I couldn't believe is that apparently Scarlett Johansson is just like the canonical Ivanka Trump now, which means, you know, you can't actually go to maybe like the 5th most important political figure in the country right now on a regular basis because she has like 17 other jobs. And like,
right.
Yeah, I mean, they just do this weird, they have this bizarre reliance on stunt casting recently where like the part I thought was kind of the step over the line was casting Ben Stiller as Michael Cohen, which I like Ben Stiller, but Michael Cohen is not a character who is big or weird or outstanding enough that you desperately need an A-list star to rise to the occasion. Like, who at home in America has like a vision of Michael Cohen in their head that they need someone to embody? He's just like a random guy. Beck Bennett could have done it. Kyle Mooney probably could have done like some greaseball version of that comedian character he does. It's just such a weird choice to be like, okay, well, we need to get someone big for this one. And I thought was like a real signal of where the show is right now.
Well, Ivanka Trump, same thing. There's two parts to it. One is you're relying on these people, as you said, who might not be available all the time. And then the second part is those are great prime parts for cast members to play and potentially, gain some steam with. Like, I really like Heidi Gardner. I think joined this year. I think she's good.
And she's like a thin, blonde, tall, like she's such a perfect, like she could be Ivanka, she could be Stormy. There are so many people.
She could be Ivanka. She could have been Ivanka right away and it would have been awesome. But now they're outsourcing that and she doesn't get to even be in the sketch. And, it's almost like if we had The Ringer and Atlanta was on and I said to you, you don't get to write about Atlanta. I've actually outsourced this to Ben Stiller because he's a bigger name. Like, that's just crazy. And I don't know if that's a way to build your talent. And I don't know if it's a sustainable model. But at the same time, the show starts and Ben Stiller's there and De Niro and all these huge names are getting it. Is a different experience watching it.
Well, and it's a weird, like, short-term boost, long-term handicap because, like, during the election, they got a huge bump in the ratings that I actually, like, looked this up, and apparently their ratings now are basically on par with where they were last year. Like, they've, on paper, SNL is doing really well. I'm sure NBC is happy. I'm sure it's making money. Like, it's working in a way that I understand why they're not in crisis mode and why they're doubling down on this. But then, if you think like, okay, like 2-3 years from now, like who's, Kate McKinnon's contract is up next year. Who's going to step up to the plate? It's such a weird, like they're creating their own vacuum.
Right. And a Weekend Update's better. But I think the fact that they're not, it used to be this never ending talent pool that they would dip into. And then I think one of the best examples was like basically 06, 07 when they found Sandberg and Hader and Sudeikis. And it was just this murderer's row of people, Kristen Wiig, and then all the way through to when McKinnon joined, which I think was at the end of that decade.
I think she's 2012.
Or 2012, yeah. So maybe near the tail end of that run. And then it's like, oh, here they go again. And then that's kind of, I don't want to say fizzled. They have a lot of like role players.
Yeah,
if it was a basketball team, they'd have no superstar, but a bunch of like solid rebounders and passers.
Yeah, I think Update's doing well enough. Like obviously Colin Jost and Michael Che just got recruited to host the Emmys, which is like a weird decision, but an understandable one. I also think one of SNL's weird hiring quirks in recent years is that they've brought on a lot of people who are like really accomplished stand-ups, but aren't necessarily like sketch players. Like, your Pete Davidsons or your Leslie Jones. And like, obviously the way to spotlight those people is to just like give them a spot on the Update desk and just let them talk as themselves for 5 minutes. And it makes for a really good, like single element of the show. But then those people can't really like go back and like perform as well as they do in that context in sketches. And so you have this weird, like, I think Kyle Mooney and Beck Bennett are kind of like that, where they have their own sensibility, but at least they can have like their own digital shorts. It's just they have a lot of good solo performers that don't necessarily fit into a good ensemble cast.
Yeah, and when you read about the history of the show is always at its best, and they'll talk about it with these people that can play any character, like the Bill Hader types. Or Kate McKinnon, these people that can get thrown into any situation. They can be the waiter in one scene and have one line, and the next scene they're carrying an entire scene. And that's just how the show has always succeeded. Usually when the casts are a little bit smaller too. This cast is pretty big. But the thing that I wanted to talk about, which I didn't even tell you what this was the topic because I want to just throw this at you.
Ooh, fun.
So SNL has always been this barometer for whatever is kind of going on culturally, right? Like you look at the 70s, it comes out of like this whole Vietnam War, Nixon and counterculture and pot smoking and drugs and just that whole, and it's just all in the show. That was the show for the first 5 years. And then the 80s come, it's an age of excess and they get caught up in that. They finally put together that one dream cast in the 85 with Billy Crystal, Martin Short, all these things. It was almost like they were putting together a giant baseball team. Then they kind of went back to the basics. And then as the show had this second renaissance in like the 15th anniversary, with the Phil Hartman, Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, all those people, it was also capturing the culture, which at that point was very pop culture driven, very ironic. Dennis Miller's doing Weekend Update. It's just that kind of, though, it was a little happier, a little more upbeat, and very like kind of kids who grew up watching TV now making a TV show. Now I look at what's happening. So you go all the way and it hits all these checkpoints. And now I'm looking at the show, and the most interesting things they're doing over and over again are stuff like the Friendos sketch and a lot of the stuff with black celebrity culture and athletes and really more black driven stuff.
Yeah, like Tucci Gang.
All the stuff. It's been the best stuff on the show all year. And this is a show that was taking shit 3 years ago that it didn't even have a female cast member. Now the show it's way more diverse than it used to be. The best shows they've had this year, Sterling K. Brown, Donald Glover. And like, I loved Sterling K. Brown did that thing with, where he did the Common thing where he was just making fun of Common as the Dr. Seuss hip hop Dr. Seuss or whatever that was. I thought that was great. The Friendos thing and a couple of these other things. And now I'm wondering, is that the direction SNL should go? Because when you think about it, celebrity culture, sports, all this stuff, they never really had the right cast to parody a lot of this stuff. And maybe that's where it needs to go. What do you think of this idea?
I mean, that is something like I've noticed recently. Like, you noticed over the past few years, like there have been sketches SNL has done that they like physically could not do in recent years because like they did not have the cast to populate that many chairs. Like
right.
Black Jeopardy as a sketch franchise, which is like one of the most successful things they've done. It's done like the Tom Hanks one was like one of the best pieces of political commentary they did. That was like they're into Black Panther, like Donald Glover doing the whole like Lando in space, where are all the black people thing. Like, it's really interesting to watch them, you know, make use of their cast that way. It was actually weirdly like I was just watching Tina Fey do the Letterman thing, that like Letterman interview show. And she was talking about it as like a female writer and the effect of like what sketches she was able to get on the air, just like as there were more women in the room at the table reads who would like laugh at jokes because they understood the references.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, she was saying she like dug Kotek's classic like out of the junk pile because the guys like literally did not understand what the joke was or like how it would be executed. And she was like, I had to explain to them like what the visual gag would be because they just like didn't know how tampons worked.
Right.
And so I think like, it's just a testament to when you have people in the room who can like pick up on something and who can pick up on things happening in the larger culture. And like hip hop is just more dominant now than it's ever been. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. Like, it's valuable to cast with an eye towards that, I think.
Well, that what you just said about Tina Fey, that's another good example of the show marrying what was happening in the culture. All of a sudden, that it was a really strong female show. Because it had Tina Fey, it had Amy Poehler, it had Maya Rudolph, and who was the other one? There was
Rachel Dratch.
Rachel Dratch. Anna Gasteyer was on right before them, but I don't know if they were all in the same cast. But that, remember, that was the first time it was like, hey, women are funny, and there were all these stupid things written and said about that. But it was kind of seizing a moment where it was like, yeah, women are funny. Here we go. We're gonna have some good stuff. And now I think like the next incarnation of this show, I think, has to capture. I don't know if they even do that Migos skit 5 years ago.
Oh, they definitely don't. Although, like,
they definitely don't have the people to have it, right?
Exactly. Like, they can't cast it that way. And I mean, like, Comeback Barack when Chance was on, like, yeah. And like, one of the most interesting things about Black Jeopardy as a sketch is like that joke is like not written with a white audience in mind, which like the rest of SNL absolutely is. Like, the references in that sketch are so specific and so not explained in a way that's like almost disorienting, like as a white viewer, but is really interesting to see like on a show that is like a historically white institution.
Yeah, you think about it crystallized some things that I didn't realize that I thought, but even something like how they never had the right person to play Obama.
Oh,
that's kind of crazy. Obama was president for 8 years. Yeah, he was president for 8 years.
They had a Latino guy who was like the only not white dude that they had, and they were like, "It's fine." That is just so wild in retrospect. I mean, like,
and the best one was The Rock. That was the only funny Barack Obama. Jay Farrow was okay, but when The Rock did The Rock Obama or whatever that was actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
Other than that.
I mean, my actual countervailing theory to that is like, I think SNL has been really good lately when it just hasn't tried to chase the zeitgeist at all. Like the cold opens aren't great. They're just like restating the headlines. And like my vote for the most interesting person involved in SNL creatively right now actually isn't a cast member. It's a writer named Julio Torres who like does some stand up, but he does these like really weird, non-topical, clearly from his own brain. He did that like Barbie sketch that Donald Glover did. He did that like weird papyrus thing that Ryan Gosling did. And it's just so like clearly the product of someone's brain and not trying to chase like clapter or a headline. And it's just some of the most like you watch it and you know who wrote it, which is like a really, really, really hard thing to accomplish in a 20 something strong writer's room.
Yeah. And I do think like, you feel it when they have a great host. It does help to have an awesome alpha dog type person in there. Like when Bill Hader was on, it was like, oh yeah, this show's really good because Bill Hader's on it, And it's like you can do 9 things now with Bill Hader that you would not have been able to do with a normal person.
Yeah, and John Mulaney hosted a couple weeks ago.
Although he was good too.
That almost felt like cheating though, because like he was a writer and he was a writer during a stronger period of the show. So like my favorite sketch that night was probably like the weird switcheroo sitcom one. And that was like a direct follow-up to Rocket Dog, which was a Tracy Morgan sketch from like 8 years ago.
I do think so Chris Redd, who is in that Friendo sketch, I think he has a shitload of potential.
Oh, he's great. His Lil Wayne impression, he did it for like 2 sentences and it just like totally popped out.
Yeah, he's definitely rookie of the year. This was his first year. He's been in a lot of big stuff already and also is really important for some of the stuff we're talking about because most of the stuff that I want to see parodied cannot be done by like Mikey Day. It's got to be somebody who is going to whip out a Lil Wayne impersonation, be like, holy shit, was that a Lil Wayne impersonation? They need more of that. I think that, this isn't just the case for SNL, but more diversity with the cast and the more flexibility they have to go in a bunch of directions, I think is the key for them.
Yeah, they've done like good hiring recently of like younger people who I could see developing. Like Melissa Villaseñor is like embarrassingly the first Latina cast member they have literally ever had. Yeah, which is not a great statistic on paper, but like she's a really gifted impressionist. She's also really distinctive. And like, I don't think the show has quite figured out how to use her yet. She was in a good sketch with Donald Glover this week. But like once they do, I could see her being really good. I think Chris and Heidi are really good. I think Luke Knoll is like the obligatory like guy per season that isn't quite going to make it. But they have a writer named Gary Richardson who's done a few sketch cameos and like a similar trajectory to what Leslie Jones did before she was formally cast that I think could be really good.
Why do you think Netflix hasn't tried to challenge the SNL empire yet and do a Friday night kind of blown out, expensive taped version of a sketch show and try to get a jump on them? And I've never understood why everybody has just ceded this ground to SNL. Even when In Living Color came in the early 90s, like that show had a significant impact culturally. I felt like I was in the demo, obviously, so I watched it, but they launched a lot of careers. Jamie Foxx came from that show, Jim Carrey, like that show. That you look back at that talent that was on that show and you go, holy shit, that show was loaded with people. And it was, even though it was an SNL shadow, it was still a success. I can't believe nobody's challenged them.
Well, Comedy Central had that like wave of sketch shows a while back with like Key and Peele and Amy Schumer that was really strong.
No, but I'm saying going weekend, late night.
Yeah.
On either ABC, CBS, Netflix.
I mean, the whole
HBO,
live thing is
whoever.
just like antithetical to Netflix, and Hulu doesn't want to like the companies own that. So I don't think Hulu would want to go up against NBC. But Netflix actually did like a really interesting comedy experiment a while back called The Characters, where it was sort of like, okay, like we have this existing model of a stand-up special where we just like give someone some money and film them in front of a wall and an audience. What if we kind of used our cash and did that for sketch performers and improvisers, where we're just like, okay, write a half an hour of stuff. You have to play a certain number of characters. It can take whatever form you want and we'll film it. And so like Lauren Lapkus did it, John Early, Kate Berlant, Tim Robinson. And it was like a really interesting, like this whole idea of showcasing a single performer can be done with something that isn't stand-up. And it seems like it didn't really pan out. They haven't done a second season, but like Natasha Rothwell, who was like the breakout of Insecure, like I first noticed her through that. And I wish they would do it again.
You can save 4 cast members for next year for SNL. Who are you saving?
Ooh, well, Kate McKinnon, I actually think needs to graduate, so maybe
Me
not
too.
her.
What is it? It's year 7 for her? 7 years is enough.
Yeah,
That's
I think she's in like this weird bind where like I don't know if there is a better vehicle for her right now because studio comedies are in such a bad place. But
well, wait a second. Aren't there like 500 shows in development right now?
yeah,
She
but,
can't
like,
get money from somebody?
She can get money for like a show. I just don't know if it would be like as good for her. I mean, if she has an idea like Barry to do what Bill Hader is doing right now, which I think is like maybe the best performance on TV and is just such a good showcase for him. Like, I think if she has one of those ideas, that's the best like route. But usually leading your own show kind of means you need to be like the straight person because you need to be the anchor. And she works so well as these like crazy big supporting characters, which would to me indicates like she should be in more movies, but there aren't all that many movies right now that would like showcase her in that way. But either way, I think she should.
It's tough.
Yeah.
I don't think she could be the lead of Bridesmaids, like that kind of thing. It almost seems like she's going to be relegated to these sidekick parts.
Yeah, I mean, she should,
know?
like, in a perfect world, she would have a part like what Tiffany Haddish had or what Melissa McCarthy had, and that would, like, be her springboard.
Yeah.
But it's hard for her. But in terms of, like, people on the cast right now, I mean, we just talked about Chris Redd, Heidi Gardner, Melissa Villaseñor, and then, oh man, I really like Pete Davidson. Like, that's kind of my hot take is I've been really, really enjoying his performances.
Wow,
I don't think
Pete Davidson corner. I wasn't expecting this.
I think it might be a little bit of a straight woman thing, but he's like really charismatic in this way where like I could see him developing into kind of a leading guy. I really enjoy his kind of like punky, smart aleck, wise guy, like, you know, little frat brother of the crew. Like,
See, I'm the other way. I think he needs to graduate, and I think his destiny is to actually have a really weird single camera FX or HBO show that has some weird angle, and he's just this lovable loser guy who knows? But you know what I mean? I would want to spend a half hour a week with him for like 8 weeks in some weird scenario.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's like Kyle Mooney's sort of similar. I actually loved Brigsby Bear. It was like never going to make any money at all, but it was such a good showcase for him personally. And like it used all of his weird comedic tics that you usually see him used to make fun of himself and then like turned it into a compelling dramatic character. I actually think like of the leading guy parts that you mentioned before, like a hater ass, maybe the closest thing they have to that right now is probably Beck Bennett. Like he's able to both just like be a dude and then like turn it on and be like baby boss if he needs to be. So maybe he's
the
kind
fourth
of the,
one.
Yeah, he's
the
like the
fourth one I would
neutral
keep.
party who kind of supports everyone.
Yeah. Quickly, you mentioned how much you love Barry. I also love Barry. I saw the first two when I was at South by Southwest, and I was worried because I had to do a podcast with them the next day. So I was like, I really hope this is good. I don't want to have to like dance around that I didn't like it or pretend I liked it or any of that stuff. And I was like, whoa, this is excellent. I really enjoyed this. And it's actually gotten kind of darker and crazier and better. And he's gotten better as the show's gotten along, which is interesting because when I did the pod with him, he was saying how when they started filming it and he did the first episode, he wasn't good as an actor because he had forgotten that he actually had to act and create a character. He had done so many other pieces of it. And it does feel like he's gotten better as the show's gotten along. The last two, including this one that was on this week, was probably his Emmy reel, this last one. I think he's been amazing. I always felt like he had it in him, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's like always been phenomenal. I was rewatching, like, I interviewed John Mulaney a while back. And so I was researching and I was watching, like, What's Wrong with Tanya, which is that, like, hilarious sketch where they're making fun of, like, Lifetime original movies. And he plays the game show host. And he does this, like, heel turn where he turns from, like, generic TV guy to, like, the joke is that he's, like, Anna Faris's abusive husband, kind of.
Right.
Which is really dark, but he plays it, like, super well. And I just thought Barry was this incredible, like, they really explore both, like, the pathos of this situation. Like, this is a guy who really wants to get out, and he is really, like, a sensitive, bruised soul who has been actually hurt and hollowed out by this lifestyle. But he's also, like, a terrifying murderer who does not hesitate when the time comes to do what he thinks he has to do. I think it's actually arguable whether he has to do it. And the way the show itself, like, follows through on its own logical premise and is like, okay, like, this guy kills people. Like, let's show him really killing people and killing people that we know and like. And what does that do to how we relate to him? And it's a really good showcase for him, but I think it's also a very generous show. Like, it doesn't glorify him. It lets other people kind of carry the real sympathy and emotional weight sometimes. And, like, it's such a weird idea. It shouldn't work. And it's like one of those things where you're like, okay, I have to trust this because I like this person and I want to see what they do. And it, like, actually lives up to it.
You wrote a piece about the last episode on The Ringer, and I thought you jumped on what I thought was the best part of the whole season, the 30 seconds when he realizes he has to kill that dude.
Oh,
when,
I mean,
it's really kind of gripping and affecting.
I physically, like, jumped in my seat when you get to the point, because you don't notice it at first, where, like, Chris, the soldier, is having this breakdown. So all your attention is on him and how he's freaking out about how he's killed someone and he can't live with this and he has to come clean. And in the middle of it, like, Hader just kind of mumbles, "Why did you have to say that?" And you don't really understand, like, what he means. And then he interrupts it and just screams, like, "Why'd you have to say that?" And, like, it is shocking. It immediately brings the scene to a halt, and he doesn't say anything, but you just immediately know what is about to happen. And you like, this thing that you weren't even thinking about as a possibility 15 seconds before is just, like, occupying your whole brain. And just, like, the expression on his face for, like, he's simultaneously, like, torn apart, but, like, not torn apart enough to not pull the trigger is just, like, I think that specific 30 seconds is the Emmy reel.
I think he's going to win Best Actor.
I mean, I was looking at the nominees and I was like...
I really think he's the favorite.
Yeah, I mean, like, last year, Glover won, which, like, he's eligible again this year, but I don't know if they want to do a repeat there. Like, Tambor's out, obviously. There was someone else who their show ended. Like, no one from Veep is in the lead category. Like, Anthony Anderson might get nominated again, but, like, he was never going to win anyway. Oh, Aziz Ansari isn't eligible anymore because there isn't a new season of Master of None. And it's like, okay, like an SNL alum that everyone likes who's in, like, a new edgy HBO show. I think he's definitely getting nominated. And, like, I think he's probably more of a favorite to win, like, a Golden Globe because they like being edgier, but I definitely hope he like makes it on the stage.
I think he has a real chance. It's funny. TV, it ebbs and flows. We have good runs. We have bad runs. It feels like we're on a great run right now.
And we
Atlanta,
were
Atlanta, Barry,
Killing Eve,
Billions, and Killing Eve. Those shows are all. My buddy Hershey, who always bitches about TV, he's like, I'm so tired of a B+. I don't want another B+. Is there an A- out there? Is there an A? Is there anything higher than a B+? And I think all four of those shows are above a B+, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this year was not off to a good start. Like, last year, within, like, the first month, we had both The Young Pope and Riverdale, which are, like, two of my favorite shows of the last 5 years. And so for, like, January and February of this year, I was kind of bummed out and it was really slow. And I was like, have we finally hit the point of peak TV where, like, we've just ordered too much stuff and no one's developing or refining any of it? And then, like, not out of nowhere, we knew this was coming, but, like, Barry hits, like, Killing Eve, like, if you are not watching Killing Eve, it is just extraordinary and, like, exactly the kind of thing where, like, TV didn't make this 5 years ago. And this is why it's a good thing that we're kind of expanding the slate right now. And obviously we both love Billions. So
yeah, it's a murderer's row. Notice I didn't put Homeland in there. Last thing before we go. You watch all TV. You know everything. You know everything that's going on.
No one watches all TV, but I try.
I know. I'm always astonished by how much you catch. There's a show you don't know about because you wouldn't know about because you're not in the demo. You're not a parent and you're not a 12-year-old girl. It's called Alexa and Katie. Have you heard about this?
Oh, is this the Netflix multicam with the two girls who are friends and one of them is cancer? Is that it? Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
I know the log line. I haven't watched it, but.
All right. So a couple things there. The girl has cancer and gets shaves her head and the whole thing, but it's like presented as almost like a Disney Channel single, multi-cam whole thing, but it's not. It's actually a little bit more serious than that. Tiffany Amber Thiessen, the mom.
Oh.
How about that?
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay.
So, and my daughter loved this show as much. My daughter just turned 13, so she's in the demo. She loved this show and it ended and she was like, I don't understand. Where's season 2? Because, kids don't have any concept of when a show premieres, when it's released. They just assume there's just going to be 100 episodes when they start liking a show. And I said, no, that's it. It's the first season. Was there going to be a second season? And she freaked out. And I think there is going to be a second season, but she has not liked the show this much ever that has been on. So yeah, I almost feel like you should check it out.
Yeah, I'll look at it. Netflix has done well recently with both like kids stuff, like 13 Reasons Why is coming back this month, which I have some issues with, but it's very, very popular. Yeah, I mean it got its job done, and then they have One Day at a Time, which is this like really sweet Norman Lear produced multicam. It's like a reboot of one of his shows, but it's like modernized and it's about a Cuban family in LA. But like it really like hits that sweet spot. I could also like really imagine that being a good family show. But they seem to be like developing their kid slate a lot. Like at Sunset Gower, they definitely have some shows shooting. But I'll check it out.
It's short too. I think the episodes are like maybe 20 minutes.
Oh my God, on Netflix?
Yeah, they've kind of fly by, especially because there's no commercials or anything, and it's just all of a sudden it's on to the next one.
Oh, a Netflix show that understands pacing is very rare. That's a good sell.
Last but not least, I plowed through the entire Cobra Kai show on Saturday night. I watched the entire 10 episode run. My whole family was gone. And I was shocked by how decent it was. Yeah. I actually genuinely enjoyed it.
You and our East Coast bureau chief, Donnie Kwok, were both like repping for it. And so also was not previously on my radar. Most YouTube Red stuff is not, but like they have something with Adam Pally in the works now. Like Facebook is making stuff. I gotta start taking these tech giants seriously.
I was shocked by how well done it was, by how all in they went. Like it really could have been a Netflix show or Hulu or any of these things. So they definitely spent the money. And if you like that movie, I think Donnie and I are more in the demo for the 1984 Karate Kid. But it's an homage to the old movie, but it's actually a completely new show. Like my son watched the whole thing, my 10-year-old son, and really liked it. He'd only seen the movie like twice.
I heard they made it like a sad thing about like two dudes who got hung up on high school. So it's
they
self-aware.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. It was really smart. And we may or may not have Ralph Macchio and William Zabka coming on the BS podcast later this week. So hold on to your hats.
Now, okay, I got to prep.
Yeah. So there you go. Alison, this was fun. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. All right, quick break to talk about Gillette. I've been shaving since college. I still shave because I'm a man who needs to shave. You know what's changed my life? The Gillette Fusion Ultra Sensitive Skin Shaving Gel. And what about the new Gillette 5 Razor? 5-bladed razor lubrication strip provides great gliding performance with less irritations. 15 soft microfins help create even and smooth shaving surface by gently stretching your skin. 360 Aqua Grip handle. Make sure you have total control over your razor even when it's all wet. Gillette offers a variety of shaving products for every guy, regardless of his personal style, skin needs, or budget, and whether you want 3 blades or 5. The new Gillette 3 and Gillette 5 razors have you covered, all under $10. That's high performance at a low price. Get Gillette Performance delivered to your door and find Gillette 5 at Gillette On Demand. Subscribe today. Speaking of shaving and playoff beards, let's talk about a little hockey. All right, I'm in Boston. She's in my office. We have 4 kids between us, and I think she's the only one on the Ringer staff who's actually watching the NHL playoffs, other than maybe Donnie Kwok. Katie Banks, what are we missing? What are we missing with this playoffs?
I was going to say, you can't leave Donnie out. That's what you're probably missing. You're missing, finally, the Washington Capitals have slayed the dragon of getting to the 3rd round of the playoffs. So we're very excited for Washington. Congratulations. The Wizards couldn't do it. Alexander Ovechkin is the only one who can.
So I've lied. I have actually watched my fair share of hockey playoffs. I just don't tweet because the hockey people, they just don't allow anyone else in the bubble. Either you're all in on hockey or you're not allowed. You're basically just relegated to the kids' table. The Bruins game, the licking from Marchand, I feel like completely changed the season, but we don't have to talk about that. The Caps thing, I just assumed when it was Caps Pens, the Caps will lose. They always lose to the Pens. That's it. What was different this year?
Well, first of all, I like how you very quickly, went past the Boston Bruins lick seen around the world.
I didn't like it.
Well, I mean, it's not a headshot at least, but NHL already has problems with diseases like the mumps, so it's probably not the best. But anyway, True. I think for the Capitals, in some ways, it's like the law of averages. Like, they've lost so many times to the Penguins. They've lost so many Game 7s that this year they were finally able to avoid having to face another Game 7 at home with just all the baggage that has. I keep going back to Ovechkin because I love him, but he's just really had a great season. He's hit a lot of milestones. He's got Kuznetsov, who scored the game winner the other night, and they've just kind of been the players that they've kind of been playing at their best. And, I think this season they just were able to finally, get over the hump against Pittsburgh. So
the Ovechkin thing reminds me of what happened with Dirk Nowitzki in basketball, where he was this franchise guy, an MVP, all that stuff. And everybody was kind of waiting for him to have his moment. And then he couldn't get over the hump. And then he became kind of unfairly maligned for years and years. And should they trade him? And what's going to happen? And just when everybody kind of gave up on Dirk, that's when the 2011 playoffs happened. And suddenly he's beating LeBron and Wade in the finals. Did it seem like people gave up on him as somebody that could be the superstar that could actually win a cup?
I think it was, he went through a period where they went through so many coaches, and at one point, they had a coach that wanted him to be, kind of playing shot blocking, hard nosed hockey instead of letting him soar, letting him be Ovi, letting him take that shot from where he shines. And I do think he's gone through a lot. It's kind of funny when you look back on some of his early years. It's almost frustrating to see that people weren't just openly embracing such a dynamic player. Instead, they were kind of tut-tutting him when he would score a goal and then, pretend to warm his hands over the light of his stick, and like it was a fire, right. and that made everyone angry in the oh so humorous hockey world. He's really come back this season. He got married in the off season. He had an awesome wedding where he was dancing shirtless and invited Vladimir Putin, who couldn't come, but sent along a tea set as a wedding gift. And it's been and then of course for Ovi, the one year that Russia wins the gold medal at the Olympics, he can't even play on the team. And
right.
But yeah, I think now someone, I think it was Justin Bourne, pointed out that no one expected Ovi to suddenly be like the silver fox that he is. He's all of a sudden like this elder statesman with his gray hair. And I think people are kind of finally appreciating him outside Washington in a way that they didn't before.
Where does he rank on the bake scale for you from 1 to 10? If Messier was a 10, where does Ovechkin rank just for your favorite hockey players?
He's up there. It's like, when I think about who I want to win a cup, it's like Henrik Lundqvist, number one.
He's an 11.
Yeah, he's at
on the big
11.
scale.
He's currently at 11. More so than Messier, because I have such hopes and dreams for Hank that I just feel so strongly. But yeah, I mean, there's actually, some of them left in the playoffs. Ovi is probably number 2 for me. PK Subban's another one. Joe Thornton, not his year this year, but those are kind of my top guys that I just would love to see win the cup. I think both Ovi and PK have in common that they, I don't know, they would just have so much fun with it. They would kind of not be afraid to, shove it in a few people's faces. And I'm a Rangers fan, and we played the Capitals a lot, but I still just have such a love for Ovi, and I kind of feel, that Washington fans have really, I'm just thinking of poor Donnie. They really deserve this. That said, it's only the third round. They haven't even made it to the cup yet, and Tampa is a really good team stacked with a lot of former Rangers. So it's kind of going to be a strange series for me to watch.
Yeah, they kind of worked the Bruins, unfortunately.
Yeah. They're really good. They went to the Cup Finals a couple of years ago, and they just have a pretty stacked team, kind of a good, just solid organization with a good plan in place. And I think you've talked about in football sometimes when that team has the big playoff win and in the first round of the playoffs, and they celebrate they just won the Super Bowl. It can be tough, I think, to play the next game. So that's what I'm a little worried about for Washington, just because Tampa really is a good team.
You missed such a great chance to say organization there. I think with the Washington fans, no Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl in 91. They have not won a title since. Not a lot of great Caps moments. They made the cup that one year, that weird Adam Oates year.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it since 98? I don't think any of their teams have gotten past the second round of the playoffs in any sport.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they've had a lot of Nationals heartbreak and all this stuff. So the Caps being in the finals would be my number one choice for a subplot. And then the 1B for that would be Ovechkin. On the other hand, I think it would be hilarious if Vegas and Tampa were the finals. And I'm kind of rooting for that too. It would just be, it's what Gary Bettman deserves as he just keeps adding teams. Here's your finals, Vegas versus Tampa. Good luck, everybody.
It really is Gary Bettman got caught smoking a cigarette and now he has to smoke the whole pack. So at the kitchen table in front of his mother. But
oh my God, it makes me so happy. And then the other possibility that could be a disaster is Tampa, Winnipeg.
Yeah. So
How about that one?
I know Canada is a country that enjoys the sport of hockey, but I think Tampa, Winnipeg is I think at least Tampa, Vegas, you've kind of got that whole story of Vegas, and it kind of does bring in, the quote unquote casual, the elusive casual fan. It's a crazy, weird, funny story that an expansion team, literally in their first season, could win a cup when no Canadian team has won a cup since since Montreal. So 25 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's hilarious to me. Sorry, Canada. The other question with Winnipeg is every time a Canadian team does well, there's this kind of constant conversation in the media about whether it's Canada's team or whether everyone in Canada hates that team, except for, so Vancouver was not Canada's team. Montreal would not be Canada's team because, no one in Toronto is going to root for them. So I'm kind of interested to see what the Winnipeg situation would be, whether there'd be sort of a begrudging appreciation for them, what they've gone through, losing the team and getting it back. But yeah, Winnipeg, Tampa, that's a tough one. And I love the Nashville Predators, so I'm rooting for them in Game 7.
Do you think they should have 2 cups and one is slightly bigger than the other? And if there's one where there's no original 6 team in the Final Four, that's like a smaller Stanley Cup. It's not tiny, but it's just a little smaller. It's like how you have the SUV that's bigger versus the smaller SUV, same kind of principle. I feel like that could work.
The crossover cup.
Yeah. The hybrid.
Yeah. It's funny because a few years back, the Final Fours were there was a year there was LA, Chicago, New York, Montreal. And LA is obviously not original 6, but it's, big market and And then there was the Boston, Pittsburgh, Chicago, LA year. And now, you know, this is the plan. We're spreading the wealth. You know, we're getting young boys and girls interested in hockey in far-flung places. I mean, I will say, having been to Tampa, I haven't been to Nashville for like a finals game, but I've been there for an early playoff game. It's really fun to see the crowds in those places and how much they love it. You know, Tampa, they kind of like have this whole setup where everyone brings out lawn chairs and sits on this like, you know, riverside lawn and watches the game right outside the arena. And you're like, man, Florida's, you know, and then goes to like a tiki bar afterwards to party. And you're like, this is actually a pretty good setup. Like if I were a player, I'd want to play in Tampa. There's no tax. And I guess Vegas has the same situation, no tax. But yeah, I haven't been to a Vegas game. I've seen it on TV, and I love how they're just going, you know, talk about turning it up to 11. I mean, they're doing these like Game of Thrones style pregame intros where the knight slays the guy with the shark banner. And then they have these weird, like Daft Punk, like drummers with weird light up masks. And it's just so over the top and so Vegas, and kind of such a, not a FU to the league, but just it's a breath of fresh air when hockey really is a sport with so much, you know, history and paying your dues, and all of a sudden, you know, this expansion team is a series away from a cup final.
Well, you know, one thing, it makes me think that an NBA team could work there, because it really does seem like they've embraced the NHL in a real significant way. And I think the Vegas Raiders are actually going to work too.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's incredible to me that an expansion team could win the Stanley Cup. You know, if this happened in the NBA, there's a 0% chance. It's not even like a 1% chance. It would be a 0% chance if you had every NBA team protect their 7 best guys.
Yeah.
Whatever the expansion team would have no chance. And yet in the NHL, this team looks like any other playoff team. Like, you watch all the games on cable, and they look like a playoff team. They don't look any different. I don't really fundamentally understand how they were able to do this. Like, I know obviously they have the hot goalie who's coming back to haunt the Penguins, but it just seems inconceivable to me that you could basically get spare parts from the other 30 NHL teams and put together a Stanley Cup contender. I don't understand it.
I mean, it really is the ultimate nobody believed in us team, you know?
Really? Like, it really is.
Like someone had to, you know, everyone on that team was a cast off, you know, maybe a few trades here and there, but
with a chip on the shoulder.
Yeah. Well, and I, you know, I think it's funny because there's talk about a potential Seattle NHL team down the road, and people are saying now, well, you know, they're going to have to change the expansion draft rules because obviously, you know, this was like unfair, or this gave them too much of an advantage. And it's like, no, if you look at, you know, people analyzing the roster back when they built it, because they kind of built it with, they could have gotten like a few more probably big names here and there, but they preferred to kind of do a lot more trades and, you know, kind of accumulate draft picks and that sort of thing. And, but, you know, people were like, this team it's a bunch of, you know, it's like the island of misfit toys. And, but, you know, I was just looking up, like, I think their leading scorer this season, William Karlsson, he played for the Blue Jackets before, and these were his last 3 seasons with the Blue Jackets. He had 2 points. I think he played for them for like 3 games that season. So, but still 2 points, 20 points, 25 points. And then this year with Vegas, he has 78 points. So, I mean, I think some of it is probably a little unsustainable, you may say. But people have literally been saying that since October. So, you know.
Well, they've been awesome at home, right? Because it makes me wonder. I do feel like that would be an advantage both for NHL and NBA too, when these visiting teams go to Vegas.
Right. It's kind of like,
God only knows. Canadian dudes, man, in Vegas. Who knows?
Yeah, it's kind of like having that like noon game in Madison Square Garden on a Sunday. Like,
right. Not
that the Knicks have been taking advantage of that home court advantage, but you know, it can't be easy for players to come into town on a Saturday night. So, yeah, I think that absolutely, I'm sure, has, even if that wins them, you know, 3 games on the margin, 2 games, like that counts. So,
so this is. Like, you know, you're in there. You're with all the hockey psychos who only want to talk to each other and prevent anyone else from joining the conversation. Are they okay with this Vegas thing?
You sound wounded.
I am a little wounded. It's like the hockey fans, they want it both ways. It's like, it's like, more people should pay attention to hockey. And then when any casual fan comes in, they just shit on them until they leave.
It really,
so it's like they have to figure out which path to take, I think.
It really is like the indie music fan that gets angry when the band goes big. I mean,
only with more violence.
Yeah, with more violence and like more obscure references. I mean, I think there are plenty that do appreciate the absurdity. Hockey fans do love absurdity sometimes, but but like I saw a tweet the other day where someone posted a photo of like the crowd outside the arena, one of those little, game day pregame crowds or whatever. And it was a pretty sizable crowd. I mean, it wasn't like nothing. And someone was like, this looks like the Trump inauguration. I see literally hundreds of fans. Wow. And I was like, that like, who are you trying to upset? I don't know. It's like, who are you insulting here? Like the fans don't care. Their team's doing well. They have a new team. Like they don't have to explain themselves for liking an expansion team. And, they're not maybe they're bandwagon fans, but like any fan of an expansion team is like from ground zero fan. So I just think it would be hilarious. That said, there's kind of the other teams probably have more players that I'm like, would be excited to see win, but like Vegas as an entity, I think would be kind of an appropriately bizarre situation.
Well, just imagine being a Maple Leafs fan or a Canadiens fan or Canucks.
I mean,
and
think
you're just
about
like, you've just been suffering for decades and then this happens.
I mean, the team you left out there, think about the Edmonton Oilers. And I mean, and even going outside of Canada ever so slightly, like the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, these are teams that have had, first of all, are like the most hockey mad places in the world. Like Buffalo TV ratings are consistently like 1 and 2, even though the Sabres haven't, been close to a successful franchise in like as long as I can remember, practically. So those two teams, I mean, they get number 1 picks, number 2 picks year after year, lottery picks, and have been kind of in these rebuild modes forever. And now, I mean, Edmonton this year, I think, was kind of a disaster. They, instead of kind of taking advantage of the fact that they have young guys on entry-level contracts, which is, so valuable, they had a terrible season and kind of, there's a waste of Connor McDavid, one of his entry-level years. So those, I don't know, those are the cities I think of that must just be like so mad.
Can I say something though?
What?
I don't feel bad for Edmonton or their fans. They were blessed by the gods in the 80s. The team they had together was probably the greatest hockey team ever assembled, ever.
Yep.
And then they won even after they traded Gretzky. There should have been a curse of Gretzky for like a million years, but they actually won the cup after they traded him. and then they picked first for how many years?
I know.
And they have like 4 number 1 overall picks, and then they stupidly traded one of them who's awesome now.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad for Edmonton at all. I feel bad for Buffalo.
Yeah. I feel bad for Buffalo. I feel like I feel like I wrote stories like at the beginning of the Grantland years, kind of like, okay, like they're turning the corner, like here we go. Please. And now that's like, what, like 6 years ago and 7 years ago. And and every year it's just kind of like the same old story. I mean, I think they finally, it's like, they have another great draft pick this year and are, kind of supposed to get this generational defenseman, but it's like, he's going to injure his foot on day 1 or something. Like something's going to go wrong for them.
Right. Last question. This is your first hockey playoffs after having carried 2 children and then being in charge of them. Is physically and emotionally, is the overtime playoff hockey game rougher for you now, or just you're in such shock all the time it's actually easier to deal with?
So 2 things. One is that like time has sort of ceased to exist for me. Like I never know what day it is, what time it is, day or night, so like these long overtime games are just kind of on like a different plane of existence that I can kind of just, go along with. But I will say, I think I think I tweeted this. I forget what game it was. I think it was a Capitals game, though. My older son, is at the age where he is just such a parrot, and he definitely screamed an F-bomb through a mouthful of yogurt because his mother had just screamed an F-bomb herself. So, I was pretty happy with kind of the trajectory he's on as a child and my parenting skills at that moment.
I'm really happy to hear that. I was worried the mountains and the whole ski lifestyle. I didn't know. I didn't know if it was going to affect you and if you weren't still swearing at the TV, but I'm glad to hear that.
I will say, speaking of the ski lifestyle, props to the number of San Jose Sharks jerseys I see on the mountain. It makes me happy. I love a good teal and black Sharks jersey, on the Squaw Valley Mountain. It's kind of the ultimate in California hockey. So
yeah, that really does sound like it. Bakes, this was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update. Talk to you soon. All right, we're going to call Lindsay Zoladz to talk about Kanye West, Childish Gambino, and more. But first, introducing Control GX, the first gray-reducing shampoo from Just for Men. Just for Men helps men look their best so they can celebrate who they are, what they achieve, how they feel. They relentlessly innovate and deliver smart hair care technology that does the work for you, making it radically easy to get the natural look you want, reducing your gray. It's as easy as washing your hair with Control GX. Use as you would your regular shampoo until you like what you see. Subtle, natural looking results. Shampoo in, rinse out, move on. Easy. Most guys get the results they want in 2 weeks or around there. Look forward to a smart look. And when you look as good as you feel, every date night, every meeting, every guy's night out, every Celtics game will be something to look forward to. Visit controlgx.com. Use promo code regrowth25 to get 25% off your purchase. That's controlgx.com. Use promo code regrowth25 for 25% off. All right, we are calling Lindsay Zoladz, who is in New York City. Some dramatic stuff happening in pop culture circles. Kanye West, who had the title for years and years as our most kind of creative music / other stuff artist, his crown has been challenged by the one and only Donald Glover. Lindsay Zoladz, one of our talented writers at The Ringer, she's been monitoring this very carefully. Has the torch been passed? Was this a seminal weekend this weekend?
A lot went on this weekend. I can see why some people would think that. A lane has been cleared. Kanye has sort of cleared the lane of, a political artist and rapper with anything to say about America and race in America. He just kind of gave that title away at the very least. And we're seeing, Donald Glover kind of stepping into that role. I think it's maybe a little premature to fully give him that title, because I think he doesn't have the songs yet that Kanye has. I think he kind of may have released his first great song this week. So I don't know, but I see why people would want to react to it that way.
So I guess the way to think of it would be Atlanta is such a groundbreaking show and such an incredible show, and one of my favorite shows of the decade, that maybe that fills part of the void. Like if Kanye's music was like his A-list thing or his A+ thing or his fastball, his number one pitch, Atlanta is the number one pitch for Glover. But then on the side now has this music career, which he's had for a few years, and it went dormant and now it's back. That video he did, first of all, that's one of the best music videos I've ever seen. And probably
it's incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah, the first one in a couple of years that I remember watching multiple times just because I wanted to pick up more stuff from it. And, the statement that it made and the chances that it took. And I've just really never seen anything like that as a music video. And I can't remember the last time that format kind of inspired me. What did you think? What was your reaction?
I think it's incredibly powerful. It's just a masterful music video. And I think an interesting thing to keep in mind in that conversation is Kanye's videos usually suck. He's pretty bad at music videos. And that's kind of one area where I think Childish Gambino as a visual artist and the aesthetic that he's developed working on Atlanta feels more fully formed than kind of the visual idea of Kanye, which has never really been like, I think Runaway is maybe his one solid video, but
yeah, Runaway is a good video.
So much.
Yeah,
it's very good, but I don't know. I think that Kanye kind of still has just the music feels more developed, and he just has more of a catalog to pull from. But I'm kind of more interested in Donald Glover as like a visual artist and this kind of meta celebrity who's talking about his fame while he's getting more famous. And I love that the more famous, especially in these like white mainstream spaces he's getting, the more he's making people uncomfortable with the idea of his fame. And that's a lot of what this video is about, and what made it such a pointed statement that he released it while he was hosting SNL. And in some ways getting, one of the biggest stages of his career, then putting out probably the most confrontational piece of work he's ever done simultaneously. I just thought that was very cool and very provocative.
Well, the music, I think Kendrick has challenged Kanye in that front the last couple of years.
For sure.
And if anything, has probably taken the title from him to some degree. But, artists aren't meant to have the title for 12 years or 13 years or 14 years. It's after a while, people get picked apart. They run out of ways to kind of keep challenging themselves. They get creative in the wrong ways. And I think it's just hard to keep it going like that. But if anybody was going to take the title from him, it had to be a combination of people in a way. So you have Kendrick, who I think musically has taken the title from him. And then Glover just with the creativity and just I don't know what this guy's doing next. And how does he do this? And oh my God, I can't believe that dude's brain works like that. Those are the kind of things he's triggering for me. I watched even on SNL, I thought the sketches could have been a little funnier, but I thought he was amazing. And I thought the Friendo skit was one of my favorite things that they've done in a couple of years. And it was definitely a memorable episode, and then combined with the video, which is now at 37 million, and Atlanta's, I think the season ender is this week. And it just feels like he's having like a real moment here.
Yeah. How do you feel about his music? Were you into the performances on SNL or not as much?
I thought they were compelling. I don't, obviously he's not the same musician that Kanye is, but something about the way he puts it all together, you just kind of watch the whole time. And it's for me, it was like, I think I'm enjoying this, but I'm more enjoying how weird this is. I like the first song more than the second song, but he's definitely unique, right?
Yeah, I actually like the second song more than the first one. So
which one was which? Which one did he play first? I can't remember.
I think the second one was This Is America.
Yeah. That one, that was the one I liked more. Yeah, you're right.
I think he can be confrontational and provocative in that way and kind of do it with a creepy smile that just casts this irony over the whole thing. And that's where he's working best. And I think it's just an interesting part of him that there's this other side of him that wants to be this very earnest, like R&B artist and just have like a summer jam. And even those songs felt like I understood like the visual component and the vision of like you experience that as like the, Zoe Kravitz in the beginning, introducing him and sitting down. It all felt really deliberate from a visual standpoint. I'm just not like totally sold on the music being there yet, but I think I'm okay with that too right now.
And by the way, might never get there because it is the second best thing that he does, right? I would say the first best thing he does is create TV and movie stuff. And then on the side, he's also doing this, but has managed to carve out his own territory.
Totally. And within the TV and movie stuff, he's doing multiple things too. He's acting, he's writing, he's directing.
Yes.
He's kind of just controlling a lot of facets that a lot of people don't in that way. So yeah, I'm impressed. I'm on board for what's happening.
I do think I've been struggling with the Kanye thing over the last few weeks. It's,
Yeah.
you know, as a lot of people have, because of what he meant. And I think he means something different to really everybody. And to watch it kind of unravel. And by the way, not a recent thing with the unraveling. I think it's been maybe a 5-year thing. And he's had some good stretches during that 5 years. But for the most part, it's been pretty crazy. And then it really fell apart to the point where, you know, it just seems like it's over. And he can rally back. We've seen musicians rally back, but for the most part, his kind of his platform has been tarnished. You know,
Yeah,
and I don't know how you get that back.
Yeah, it's strange that the conversation, like the tone of it, almost feels like you're reading his obituary or something. Like I finally read the Ta-Nehisi Coates essay this morning, and couple other things that had been published. You know, there's been some very good writing about the epic failure of Kanye in the past week. But yeah, it's like there's like an elegy quality to the way people are talking about him. Like there's no coming back from this, and just that some idea of what we had of him is over, and it's sad. It's just been really a bummer to watch all this unfold.
Well, you wrote, I'm going to say it was, I forget what point in 2016, but you wrote for us about going to his shows and about the rants that he would do. And, you know, he was always crazy and he would always go off the rails, but we were always on his side with it. And even in his concerts, you know, when he would do these 10-minute soliloquies on whatever, and that turned into kind of a thing, but people felt like it was like reasonably adorable. It was like, oh, here goes Kanye again. Oh boy, here we go. And it wasn't much different than what Bruce Springsteen would do way back in the day. When you go see Springsteen, he'd be like, go into this 8-minute story about something, or even U2 at their heyday, Bono would always at some point go off the rails with some long monologue. And it was just part of going to the concert. It was like, oh, here's the part where Bono goes off the rails. But it was never a bad thing, and it was kind of amusing. And especially in the internet era, people are carving it up and having fun with it and running their transcripts and all that stuff. But the seeds were also there for what's happened the last few weeks to happen, I think, especially when you look back and you go, oh man, like he was always teetering on the line of this might end up going badly. And then, and now we're here, unfortunately. But
yeah,
what would it be like going to he's gonna tour, I think. Would you want to go to a tour of his? What would be the mindset going in? What would that be like?
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many question marks ahead with him. I don't know what this album rollout looks like. I feel exhausted thinking about the fact that we still have like a month before this record comes out, and just feels like so many more things could happen between now and then. Yeah, I think it's just a really big question mark about what the music is going to be like. Is it going to be like these 2 songs, if we want to call them that he put out in the past couple of weeks? Is it going to be just a total left turn? Like, I have no idea, but I don't feel optimistic about any of it, really.
I think it's really hard to make relevant music for more than 8 to 10 years. We even saw this with Timberlake in his last album. And, you know, Timberlake really, if he was an athlete, you would say his apex was like the 06, 07 range when, you know, his had that iconic album come out. He does the Barry Gibb show with Fallon on SNL. And that was kind of his apex. But then you're able to extend that. And I remember I was at one of the Super Bowls, like 2013, when the album that had Suit and Tie was coming out. People were fired up. It's like JT's back. And now it's 2018 and he has this album and he tries this Man of the Woods thing and does all these kind of quote unquote risky stuff with it. But the reality is there was no hit song in the album. And it always comes back to, is there a hit song? You know, like the Red Hot Chili Peppers were dead. And then all of a sudden they had the Californication album, and then the album after that, which had some, and it was like those albums had good songs on it. It was like, here they are, they're back. And that's why with Kanye, I just feel like if he has one great song, I do feel like he could kind of overcome this, because people always forgive anything when there's a good song. What do you think?
Yeah, I watched most of the Charlamagne interview that he did, which I don't recommend watching as much of it as I did because it's like 2 hours long and it is an endurance test. But he talks about, I think I didn't realize until watching that how disappointed he was that there wasn't a big radio single off Life of Pablo, which I think that was a record that just was talked about totally divorced from like radio and Grammys and the really traditional signposts of what is a hit that he still pays attention to. And he just seems really kind of hurt and that people didn't play those songs on the radio, even though there is not a song on that record that really stands out of like, oh yeah, this, you can hear this as the hit, like maybe Famous, but that didn't really take off in kind of a mainstream way, even though I still really do like that song. So I think he's there too. He kind of pays more attention than a lot of people do these days to those really like almost old-fashioned markers of what is a hit, what does it mean to be influential, do you have to win the awards and be on the radio and kind of reach that mass audience? So I don't think he's connected. I mean, the past 2 records he's done haven't really had that radio hit, but they've had more buzz and kind of critical acclaim. But I think he wants to get back to that populist moment. And that's in all of his, you know, however well-intentioned his ideas about bringing people together are and free thought and stuff. I think he wants that mass appeal again. I just don't think he's going about it the right way at all.
I got to say, Famous is one of my 5 or 6 favorite Kanye songs. And
it's so good.
I think that song's amazing. And I honestly think the only reason that song didn't take off was because of the controversy with it.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think he inadvertently sabotaged and submarined that song from becoming a hit because the Taylor Swift part of it, which is harsh every time you listen to it. I think it really detracted from the ability of that song to take off. And it's weird because sometimes a controversy really helps a song. But I think if you listen, by the way, that song's on my daughter's Get Fired Up for a Soccer Game list. So I've listened to it a lot. That song's really good and has some different, it moves a couple different ways. And I think it's up there with some of his best stuff. But I wonder if that's what makes him mad. Where he knows that one should have been something and it wasn't. He's like, I can't win. He almost, not to bring it into sports again, but, feels like one of those athletes that just can't get respect. Maybe, I don't know.
Probably. Yeah. Cause that felt like one of the first times too, that the controversy did not benefit him, like in almost every other way, even when it's Obama calling him a jackass or something, like there was more attention on him for that and kind of people defending him no matter what. And I think you're right, like something about the Famous episode and Taylor Swift reacting the way that she did, that just soured a lot of people on that whole thing. It felt like a lot and people weren't willing, I think, and now what he's doing, like people just aren't willing to overlook certain things in the way that they used to be.
It's tough. This is a tough year for Kanye fans. It really is. And I think that's why so much good writing and so many interesting takes have come from it. I thought the Coates thing was really fascinating and his take on what fame can do to people, I think is a really important take. And I think there's a reason that we've seen so many child actors and musicians just get derailed, that hit it maybe a little too early or hit it in a way that was almost impossible to deal with. That's why even somebody like Justin Timberlake, I think, is more of a rarity. When you think like he was famous when he was a kid and then became famous again as a young adult and then was in the most publicized relationship one of them of the early 2000s and seems like he's relatively normal and stable. I don't think that's a usual thing. I grew up with Michael Jackson losing his mind over the course of 12 years. And it's like, he clearly was because of when he became famous and just how weird his life was. I think we forget that stuff. Kendrick, Kendrick just seems like he's just kind of over here. He does his thing. He's not caught up in any of that. Kind of willingly avoids it in a way. And maybe that it's going to be better for him for the long run.
Yeah, he hasn't even like publicly bragged about winning a Pulitzer too. Can you imagine if Kanye won one?
Oh my
like,
God.
I don't think Kendrick's said anything publicly though since then, which is the ultimate flex. Like he doesn't even have to talk about it. Yeah, he's just in his own corner. You're right. Just
it's smart.
Taking it in and that probably, Kanye is always going to be the opposite of that. He doesn't know when to exit the conversation.
I talked on a podcast, I forget who it was with, maybe like 8-9 months ago about, all the stuff happening in America and when was it going to really trickle into music in a significant way, And I think in some cases it would, like for Kendrick, it was bad luck because a lot of what was in his album right before Trump got elected, he could have just released that album and done a couple minor tweaks and it would have had infinitely more impact post-Trump. But for the most part, like, in the 70s, Vietnam War, Nixon, all that stuff, and the music really reflected the times. And some of the best songs were about, dissatisfied youth and people dying overseas. And it just really fueled some great art. Are we starting to see the seeds of that now, post-Trump, with something like the Childish Gambino thing this weekend?
Maybe. I don't think it's going to come from Kanye, though, judging by the 2 songs that he put out.
No.
No. Just objectively not good songs.
Yeah, you properly skewered those songs. You properly skewered those songs in the Ringer last week. But some of the other artists, I mean, we might have some moments here. And I think this music video that it was been up for 2 days, we're taping this, or 3 days. 2.5 days. It's got 37 million views on YouTube already. That feels like something.
Yeah. And I think too, like we were saying at the top, like Childish Gambino has kind of struggled to find what his voice is and what that project means aside from the other things that Donald Glover does. There's been different mutations of that project. And he started out just kind of this hashtag rapper and then morphed into this full-fledged R&B guy. And now I think this lane of being really politically confrontational and whatever he's doing right now, it's working. And I think it has people paying attention to his music more primarily than they had in the past. So I'm all for it.
What do you think Disney thinks with this Solo movie coming up? You think they're like, hey, Donald, could you scale it back just like 10%, please? We're begging you.
Yeah, like, was there a call this week? Maybe. I don't know. But I love, like I said, I love what he's doing with just making the mass audience kind of uncomfortable and a little squirmy. And because there's nobody else really doing that to that extent right now who's really rising to that occasion and not, it's very brave what he's doing in a way. Like he's not shying away from throwing stuff back in people's faces at the moment that he, could really level up.
Well, he has the critical gravitas to pull it off too, from all the other choices he made, which I think is an important piece of this. I don't think a lot of artists could have pulled off that music video and done it at the level he did it. And, it crosses a couple lines. There's no question, but he had earned the right to cross some lines. And I don't know if there's a lot of people out there that might have done that. I'm just amazed. Like, when I was a kid, Belushi and Aykroyd, they did the Blues Brothers. They were on SNL, which was the biggest show in 78 or whatever, 79. They had an album that I think was #1 at one point. And then they had that Blues Brothers movie, or they were Animal House and Blues Brothers. And Belushi at one point had the #1 movie. He was on the #1 TV show and he had the #1 album all at the same time. And I don't feel like that's ever happening again. But what Glover is doing right now, Solo will be the #1 movie. Atlanta will never be the top TV show, but it's certainly one of the 2 or 3 most critically acclaimed shows of this year. And then, his music and the video and hosting SNL, like it's really rare to put all that stuff together in the same year. I really admire that dude.
Yeah. Same.
Who else has Childish Gambino potential this year? Anybody?
I mean, I guess there's a new Drake album. I guess we have to mention that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see how that unfolds. Like, that feels kind of beside the point right now. I don't know. And I don't know if it's because we're kind of looking to these political conversations right now. And I don't think Drake is an artist that is ever going to give that.
No.
I think he's more like out to give people a good time and forget about what's going on in the larger world. I'm curious to see how he fits in a moment like this, and if he does, and where he fits. And yeah, I don't know, but I'm pleased with the developments from Childish Gambino.
How much of the Sixers Celtics series have you watched?
Oh, all of it. Yeah.
So I went to the Sixers game last night, and it's a great crowd, and they get super edgy and pissed off pretty quickly. I was impressed. It reminded me of a Boston crowd. There was a lot of testosterone in the building.
As much as we don't want to admit there are similarities there, I think there are a lot. But yeah, Saturday was a heartbreaking moment. Yeah.
The confetti game.
The confetti metaphor was like, it felt like a metaphor larger than itself. You know, the confetti falling, the premature victory. And I really thought it was a 3 too. I thought he had it. And, you know, the 10 minutes where they had to sweep up the confetti there's a lot to say there.
I feel safe predicting that we'll never see confetti at another Philadelphia 76ers game. I think they have moved on from the confetti. Yeah.
It'll always be too soon, no matter how.
I'm in Boston right now, and believe me, I do not feel like the Celtics have won the series yet. I feel like there could be more basketball. Your favorite to win Game 5.
I would love that to happen.
Yeah. You were an Eagles fan too, right?
Yeah. So we're riding high this year.
I was so psyched yesterday going to the Celtic game, and all the parks are near each other, and drove by the football stadium to get to the basketball stadium, and there was a big Eagles Super Bowl champion banner. It was like a gut punch. I was like, oh no, I just wasn't ready for it emotionally. I'm still coming to grips with the Super Bowl, but
it's still so present to, like, anytime I've gone to the Philly area the past couple of months, it's just like everybody's still wearing the jerseys. I got my Super Bowl champs t-shirt that I bought at the train station.
Yeah.
You can see
it.
I was actually wearing that on Saturday, but didn't work.
Yeah, you could see it in the airports. I remember when the Pats won their first Super Bowl, it was the same thing in Boston. The whole city felt like it transformed for like 3 months. Everybody was actually tangibly happier. Like you could feel it. And it just stayed that way.
It's still going on there. So I think somehow that energy has like carried the Sixers farther than we thought they were going to get this year. So I'll take it.
Well, I'm not congratulating you on the Eagles, and I'll give you a mild congratulation on an incredible Sixers run, but that's it. Lindsay Zoladz, what are you writing? Right. What's coming up next for you?
Oh, man. I am working on something that will probably be on The Ringer by the time this airs. I'm profiling Stephen Malcolmus from Pavement, which was like a true dream come true.
Wow, Pavement.
To hang out with him. It was really fun.
That's exciting. Yeah. Now we're talking my era. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, excellent. All right, Lindsay, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. All right, thanks so much to Katie Bakes. Thanks to Alison Herman. Thanks to Lindsay Zoladz. Thanks to ZipRecruiter, our presenting sponsor. Go to ZipRecruiter.com to check them out. Thanks to Gillette. Gillette offers a variety of shaving products for every guy, regardless of his personal style, skin needs, or budget. And whether you want 3 blades or 5, the new Gillette 3 and Gillette 5 razors have you covered, all under $10. High performance, low price. Get Gillette performance delivered to your door. Find Gillette 5 at GilletteOnDemand.com. Subscribe today. Thanks to Control GX, the first gray reducing shampoo from Just for Men. Shampoo in, rinse out, move on easy. Most guys get the result they want in about 2 weeks. Visit ControlGX.com. Use promo code REGROWTH25 to get 25% off your purchase. Thanks to TheRinger.com. Don't forget to go there this week for a bunch of new stuff about the basketball playoffs, music, Lindsay Zoladz pavement thing that's coming up. I can't wait to read that. Everything we got going there, and the Ringer Podcast Network, which is booming as always. Ringer NBA, Dave Chang, Against All Odds with Cousin Sal. They'll have some gambling picks for you this week. House of Carbs, The Watch, Binge Mode, Shack House, Ringer NFL, The Masked Man. I could keep going and going. Check all of that out. Channel 33 Press Box, talking about Peter King leaving Sports Illustrated, which happened since I did the last podcast. Best of luck to him. Would love to have him come on sometime. Yeah, I thought he had an incredible 29-year run. Hugely influential, an inspiration for this guy and many others. Anyway, congrats to him. Good luck with the new gig, Peter King. And we will talk to you tomorrow on the BS Podcast.